usually within a few hours or a day, not more than a day. I am trying to make it right after the meeting. And now I'll explain exactly where I'm uploading to and so on and so forth. I going to start off by asking if there is anyone new here. You can use the feature in Teams where you uh, raise your hand. There's like there's an icon. Okay, so we have a couple of people. Okay, welcome. 3 people.
Thank you.
Uh, Great seeing you. I'll explain what are we doing here. This is actually 3 years. This is 36 meeting number 36. Now, I like when the whole pandemic thing started, I thought this is gonna be a very short couple weeks kind of a thing, and it became at least 2 years and to be continued maybe. So so on March 2020, I skipped one. So I started, I think, I can remember, I think March 2019, and then 2020, I couldn't have everything like everyone come in person, so I skipped that one because the whole thing started. And then in April, I realized that this is gonna be more than few weeks, so I started having the virtual meeting. Um, we didn't actually have in the first year any virtual meeting at all. It was all in person in an office somewhere very close to Miramar. And actually, it started with UTC, and then we moved to Miramar. And since then, it's been virtual. And so we have 2 years in a row. So since April last couple of years, which is great. Um, so there are a few new people. Let me explain the motivation, what I'm trying to do here, and kind of a disclaimer. I have like something came up today, and I have a conflict, so I'm gonna make it shorter than 2 hours, maybe more like 1 hour, maybe a few minutes after 6 p.m. This my time in San Diego. So I'm sorry about it. It's just something that uh, just came up, and I would need to kind of adjust the meeting. So hopefully it's okay. So I am though I'm doing most of the presentation and talk. I do seek for other people uh, participating in talks. So if you have anything that you would like to share, it doesn't have to be super polished. It can be a discussion, something that you find during programming at your job, or maybe a hobby uh, toy project that you're having. Maybe a question that you want people to you want to ask people and you want to discuss. Uh, I can't promise that we'll have answers for everything, but we definitely there are lots of people here that lots of levels of expertise. So we can definitely try. And worst case, we can take it offline. Either use one of the channels that we have, like Discord and Slack, or maybe take it to the next meeting and have a small few slides just to explain what happened and how we answer that. There's millions of resources for C++. It's endless ocean, and so it's easy to pick up anything, and you see what I'm doing. I'm spending a few hours every month picking up all kinds of ideas and just building something, few slides around it. So you'll see how I'm doing that. So there's a lot of things that you can um, dig out there and get the information and create few slides. And it can be something short, quick, or if you want a 1 hour or more, that's also we had that before. So everything goes. Um, and we are all here. The goal for this meeting is that at the end of the hour or in the end of 2 hours, uh, you'll end up learning something new that you didn't know that C++ can do that, or C++ had that, or there is this new cool thing that I didn't know that might make my life easier. Now the agenda, I'm trying to craft it with all kinds of levels. It's pretty tough because I know a few of the people in a meeting, and there are all kinds of levels of expertise, from beginners, like people approaching me and say, okay, we used to do C++, we want to redo it, like we want to start doing C++ again, and the standard is evolving very rapidly, as opposed to what we used to have like a long time ago, which is it's good and bad. It's good because people used to say, okay, Java is better and Python is better. They have more libraries and they're advanced faster, and C++ is kind of static. Like why that's, and Boost is, there are all kinds of libraries that try to and successfully manage to fill the gaps. Like Google have their own libraries that also fill the gaps. We have Boost. We have all kinds of stuff out there that helped, but eventually the standards start evolving, and this is good because it's evolving, but it's kind of tough for others to keep up, and it's really hard and it's hard for everyone, including expert in the industry that I kind of communicating with, that it's really hard to understand everything in C++. There is no such thing. Okay, I'm done learning C++. There's always new things that you can figure out, and new libraries and new APIs of the standard and so on and so forth. And I am trying to bring in all kinds of new, maybe functions, maybe classes, maybe techniques that would help you to build a new solution in your at your work, toy project, and so on and so forth. So you can see that the agenda has multiple levels. Not every time I remember to you see my slides, right? Hopefully. You see the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm trying to craft the agenda to have multiple like levels. I don't think we'll be able to hit the last one. Again, I'm sorry, but there is something that came up today, personal thing that I need to finish the meeting earlier than I expected. But we have lots of stuff to cover even before we hit this last talk. You can see I would start with some fun quiz that I'm taking from C++ quiz, kind of cherry picking. Then I would like to talk about Patreon, why it's good to support, like what is the benefit, just people from the community that is worth supporting. Uh, I pick book of the month. I like looking at what books we have, C++ books we have on the horizon, like in the pipeline, what is recently published, and not even recently, like what even something that published maybe 20 years ago that I still think that worth reading. I also bring up to the group attention. Uh, so I think it's things that I would recommend. Some stuff I like, some books I would like highly recommend, and some of them is like it's good to have in your bookshelf and reach out when you need it. Then I always kind of looking at Stack Overflow, usually on my Twitter feed, looking at all kinds of Stack Overflow questions, cherry pick uh, questions that I can build a small, maybe 10, 15 minutes um, tutorial or discussion around it. That I think is a very interesting topic that can maybe include all kinds of elements in the language that worth knowing. There is something from Reddit which is really easy. Again, I'm trying to shoot for also beginners, like very beginners. So this would be one of them. And then there is the Wallet Fox website that I'm cherry picking all kinds of ideas to. This is kind of, as is from the website, all kinds of images that I'm having discussion, which I highly recommend. Two things. first looking at the Wallet Fox website, and the second thing, there is the Ranges V3 booklet. It could be either an ebook or there is a printed version, uh, very stylish version that I recommend people to look at, and I personally purchasing that. Um, it is shipped from Europe. Um, so and I would try to have maybe 15, 20 slides as a bigger talk with some subject. But again, I welcome people that want to have their own pitch, they want to have their own talk uh, in the meetup. It's pretty much open. Um, I think again I'll start trying bugging people in the community. It is 2022 to come over and have a talk that they can share with us. Okay, this is sponsored by Qualcomm WRD software, which I'm part of. Uh, so my VP is supporting that. They are paying the meetup fee, which is about almost $100 every 6 months. So thank you, Qualcomm, for supporting that. Qualcomm, and especially my VP Charles Bergen is very supportive in this effort, and I'm super happy to have him as my VPN. Thank you again for supporting that. We have a Dropbox link that and this is part of the meetup uh, welcome section in the meetup.com website. So there is a Dropbox link that I upload all the slides. There is a Slack channel that I honestly I don't remember the last time I opened Slack. So and there is a Discord. I am on Discord mostly because I'm on all kinds of other C++ and some Rust related uh, areas and like servers. But we do have our own Discord server, but I don't have time to kind of maintain it. But if you if you mention my name, I'll get notification either on my phone or on my desktop. We have our youtube.com channel, SDCPPMU, so San Diego C Meetup, all sessions since I think I have like 15, can remember, maybe 18 sessions that I uploaded. I didn't start from the beginning. I like people asked me to start uploading some time back and I started doing that. We do have a Twitter account where if you follow that, you'll get all kinds of notifications about upcoming sessions. My Twitter account, I'm managing both of them, would be Kobe_CA. I tweet about C++, just programming in general, Rust, Python, Linux, Unix, and things like that. No politics. At least I'm trying. I don't think I had politics. I might like some politics, but I'm not doing any politics related to post. Uh, I have few. I want to highlight Martin's blog that I have a space. I have some uh, pages there that I blogged. It's been a while since. It's probably due to think about something, but a part of that I have just few. Martin has like millions of pages. Very interesting one. I highly recommend you to go over that and peek at the pages. I think he covers almost everything. Again, there is nothing everything to cover in C++. You can never cover everything, but he has millions of posts there, which are very very interesting, and I learned a lot of things. So so thank you, Martin. Thank you for hosting me. And that's it. Before we go into the actual session. Is there any questions related to what we're trying to do here and the flow of the meetup and similar? I'm going to, while you all thinking about that, I'll start opening uh, my quiz. Okay, so this would be the first one. Okay, so if you're not familiar, if you're new to this, there is a cppquiz.org. They have GitHub. This is actually a front end to their GitHub. They add a question every, I don't know, a month or a few weeks, and I try to cherry pick something that is either useful. I try not like tricky, but useful stuff that we can learn from it. So take a look at this question. I'll give you 30 seconds, and there are a few options. Either it has a guaranteed output, so you can take a look and see what the output can be. Either it has a compilation error, it's undefined, or unspecified implementation defined. Okay, so there are four options, and you can shout. There is no, you don't need to raise your hand. You can shout, "Hey, Kobe, it's this." So what do you think? So we have a sum function that gets an integer. It returns auto. So auto would need to be deduced. So if we have I equal 1, it returns I. Otherwise, it returns sum I minus 1 plus I. So what do you think would be the result? So is out of these four?
Got to be 3, right?
3. It is 3. This is true. So the whole exercise, and this is high difficulty. Yeah. Someone is saying something.
I'm always wrong. The obvious answer is always wrong on these, so I'm just really surprised I got it right.
So actually, the obvious one is you're right. Sometimes the obvious one is the wrong one. And we actually I have something that looks really obvious, and I got it wrong, and I didn't realize until actually reading the correct answer. So it is 3 if you just run it in your head. It's 3. But the whole idea is that how the return function deduced. And if you read here, it is deduced because we have return I as the first one, and it has this example. If you invert a statement, the if statement, and swap the order of the return statement, you get a compilation error. So we haven't deduced in from return I when we counted the recursive call. So basically, the compiler encountering this, and there is a recursive call, and it cannot deduce it. But if we have this, the compiler can deduce. So I have an example actually, so you can see how it looks like. This is a compiler explorer if you're not familiar with. So if I flip it and say, okay, use of sum before deducing of auto. So you try to use sum before you actually deduce the auto, which doesn't work. But if we flip it, it's going to work. I actually thought when I was reading that, I think they added this question where there was a Twitter. I think there was a Twitter discussion regarding this idea of having deducing the return value. Um, anyway, so that's our first thing. Guess. Okay, next one. This is easy, but it's kind of a recap about how floating point literals look like. So what would be the answer here? Again, the same answer. It's all 20. It was C++ 17, and difficulty would be like easy. So 2.5 is what? So we have an overload here, right? In C++, we have overload. So it's going to be 2.5 would be bound in compile time to float or to double. It's all compile time binding, right?
It's a double.
It's a double. Okay, so double is 2, right? And then we have this f. What is f? F is a float literal, so it's going to be float. So 1. Just remember that the default is double. And if you want to specify float, there is a literal that you can use in order to make it float. There's all kinds of literals, by the way. We talked about it. If you go to CPP reference, there's all kinds of very useful literals. There are beats and floats and other stuff. Some of them are you don't need to bring any namespace in, but some of them you would. Okay, next one. Okay, this is a very tricky one. I don't think it's 2. I think it's even 3 and above. What do you think would be the answer here? So the tricky part is that we're actually creating an instance here and printing something, but we deleted the constructor.
Undefined.
Undefined.
I would go with 0.
And someone says 0. Okay. So it looks very weird, right? I actually thought initially that it would be compilation error, but it's 0. Was it you, Martin, saying 0?
Yeah.
I see.
Okay, why 0? Why do you think 0?
If you constructed it with S, open, close, regular parentheses, it would be a compile error, but this is an aggregate initializer.
It's an aggregate, yeah.
So
yeah, it's an aggregate, and since equal delete is a user declared and not user provided, it's still an aggregate, which is, I know it's counterintuitive that you deleted that and it should be either undefined, like someone said, or maybe compilation error because you cannot create an instance, but it's still an aggregate. So since it's an aggregate and you initialize it this way, so this is defined, it's actually initialized to 0. It would be copy initialized from an empty initializer list, which is basically going to be 0. Value initialized as int sets to 0. This behavior is changed in 20. S is not an aggregate anymore. This is, by the way, very, very hard and very frustrating parts that you need to remember. Like you're looking at a specific code and you say, okay, what is the standard? Because in one standard, it's going to be aggregate. In another standard, it's not going to be aggregate. It has a user declared code standard, and then this code would be generating compile error. You can explore this further in CPP insert or compile error. Okay, let's take a look.
there's one nice thing about aggregate initializers, by the way, which came in handy to me a few days ago, and that is they evaluate left to right. So whether you expand a template parameter pack or do function calls, you can call f, whatever. I think in aggregates, it's always guaranteed to go left to right, as opposed to undefined order of function parameter eventually.
Yeah, so here's the 2a. The 2a is an error, so it's not an aggregate anymore. Usually I thought that they're actually relaxing the whole aggregate thing, but this is a restriction. Something that used to be an aggregate, now it's not an aggregate anymore. So apparently it's not always true that they are relaxing. It's here's an example that it's actually okay. This is pretty tricky. I didn't get it right. I guessed it wrong when I look at it. What do you think would be the result here? Like, is it going to be printing or anything like this here?
Is underscore global a special value that we don't know about?
Because of what? Because of the underscore?
I don't know. Or is it some sort of preprocessor? Obviously,
so,
I would say 1.
Yeah, I guessed 1. It's not 1 actually. Well, it would give you 1. It probably pretty in many implementation, like compiler implementation, that is, it's gonna be 1. But it is by definition undefined. Everything that starts with underscore is undefined. There is a very good I should have a reference to this. Jason Turner has a so it has Jason has this C++ Weekly, right? So it has one C++ Weekly where he talks about starting an identifier with either double underscore or begin with an underscore followed by an uppercase. And each one which begin with underscore is reserved to the implementation use name. Okay. Unfortunately, lots of implementation that I see in a lot of places, they use underscore something. Some of them actually using underscore and a capital like uppercase later, which is even worse. So no, don't use underscore something or underscore something. It is reserved. It's undefined behavior. Don't do that. End of discussion. People argue about it. Just end of discussion. Have a postfix. Okay. Okay, this is actually cool. if you are new to templates, this would be very, very helpful. I remember long time ago, maybe 8 years ago, I had a bug related to this. I didn't realize what I'm doing, and I had a bug, and I'll explain the bug when we kind of finish that. So, what do you think is going to be the result here?
0, 1, 0.
Okay, 0, 1, 0. Explain. This is true, by the way, but explain.
Const is a part of the type, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
instantiating the template F with 2 separate types, and each instantiation gets its own static local variable. So
yeah. So I had a bug.
static
Yeah.
stat.
Yeah, I had a bug where I had this exactly this very similar code, but exactly the same way where the template had a template parameter of a function. It has a static, and I didn't realize that there was one expression that instantiating the template with a different type. Just didn't realize, and I can remember what exactly the detail, like what is the type, but it was very similar. I just didn't realize that, and weird things happen because it's a different instance. So the static was initialized back to whatever the initial thing was, and yeah, it's just be aware that. So by the way, it took me great few hours to understand that. So since then it's kind of burned in my brain that it's kind of, I know that if I have a function with a static, like a template function that is with a static, I need to be very careful. I rarely do that anymore, but this is actually it's a good question. Just make sure that you understand that when you write code like this, if you write code like this. Okay, let's go back to our slide deck. Let me make it a presentation mode. Okay, so we have that. Okay, so now I would like to highlight few patterns that are worth looking at. They have a lot of good content related to C++ that you can tap into and learn. Some of them they create content. Some of them created maybe a tool that is useful. I'll just go by very fast. Just spend a few minutes on that. Just I think it's worth thinking about that just to contribute and get exclusive content from these creators. So we start with. So these are the creators that I support, and I'll go one by one. So Jason Turner is the first one, and the perks that you get from Jason Turner is basically discounts on his ebooks, and sometimes it's a free ebook. I can remember like all kinds of the details, but there are all kinds of free ebooks or maybe discounts. Most of them were free. I I think you get kind of an early pick on his C++ weekly that is going to be published anyway. And the biggest thing is an exclusive access to the Discord where you can ask him questions, participate in all kinds of very, very interesting discussions on C++. So that's something that you get also as part of supporting Jason. Matt,
I
yeah.
can't see that. I might be. I'm stuck on the C++ quiz slide. Are you showing the Patreon slide?
Yeah, you don't see it?
There we go. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So sometimes it doesn't flip. So I have this and now I flip it. Do you see it, Jason?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Sometimes I have no idea what's happening. I am sharing, but it doesn't cooperate. So thank you for that. Uh, the next one would be Matt. Look, Matt, the compiler explorer that he created, I start using it, I think 2016, if I'm not mistaken. I was in CPP um, uh, conference, and I started using it, and I immediately said, this is something great. It had just few capabilities, very few compilers, and it grew up to something very, very amazing, feature rich, and supporting it just basically to operate. Like he needs money to run it on multiple. I don't know which cloud vendor he's using. I can't remember, but there are multiple people that also help him to maintain his GitHub. So this is something that I also support just because I'm using it a lot. So it's just a few bucks every month would be my support for that. Felipe Butler, I don't know how to pronounce his name actually, but
Bartek.
Bartek, yeah, thank you, Bartek, yeah, thanks. It's good that I have. So he's from. He's not Polish, right? Is he? No,
Yeah, he is.
he
He's
is Polish.
actually, yeah, he lives in Krakow, in Poland.
Okay. Awesome. And I have a lot of discussion with this creator, and he has a lot of material that he uh, release exclusively to the to supporters. So he's one of the people that actually has a lot of content that he would release. He has very good quality content. Most of it, uh, he has his blog also, but a lot of exclusive content goes into his supporter. There is, by the way, this is a recent screenshot. You can see this init book. He's working on a C++ init book, which is it's pretty amazing. It's a very I don't know, a few dozens of pages that are um, including all kinds of initializing C++ init related techniques. So it's kind of amazing that you can feel a whole book from just how to initialize C++ related objects. So it's almost ready. I think he should release it in a few days. The next one, actually, we had as a guest here in the meetup, Andreas Ferdig, and he also has some content which is exclusive to creators. Sorry, to supporters. Also, something that I support, having him as a one of your of Patreon. Rainer has few bundles that he release. He does have every Monday. He does have something that he released to the community in his blog. But there is some bundles that you can see these PDF bundles that he would release exclusively to the user. He has very good, very thick books, by the way. Some of them you can buy online on Amazon. Some of them are on LeanPub as ebooks. He's also a trainer. It's a very, very known person in the community. Okay, CPP Cast. It's a podcast that runs by Rob Irvin and Jason Turner. They have a podcast released every Friday, but you get as a supporter, you get a notification about the podcast a day before. So Thursday night, you'll have the opportunity to access the podcast even before others. The last one is Fluent C++. Jonathan he's from France, as far as I know, also has a lot of exclusive content that he released only for his supporters. Again, a very quality content that has a lot of very. He's a very knowledgeable person. I met him in CPPCon 2019, and great content and recommending supporting him as well. Okay, so the next item for today would be the book of the month. And there is a second edition, it's pretty new, of the Practical C++ Design. Again, second edition by Adam Singer, which I have a copy, both a hard copy that I looked at and also an ebook. By the way, these books are not cheap. It is updated, so as far as I remember, the first edition was all the way to 17. This is updated to 20. It has actually a lot of examples about modules. So it has a lot of modules related stuff. So if you have a compiler that support that, you can actually try out the examples. I was kind of surprised how many. It's one of the fewer books that I looked at that using modules like almost everywhere in their examples. So I was kind of surprised that they went full on modules, which is introduced in C++ 20. Other things that I noticed while looking at the book, it using a lot of modern C++ syntax from structure bindings, stood variant, and others to express various modern design patterns, and you can find. So reading the code, you basically it's a good example of how to write correct modern code using the latest techniques in C++, 17 and 20. It's mostly 20 that was updated. From string view, it has a Qt section, building UI, which is really interesting, by the way, even using C++ concepts. So there's a lot of very interesting things to digest in the book that I definitely recommend looking at. Okay, some more technical stuff. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm taking, I'm kind of luring and looking at all kinds of Stack Overflow questions, and I'm kind of picking something that we can all learn. So there was Stack Overflow. Is there a way to pass order as an argument to C++? And this was asked 6 years ago. So 6 years ago was before 17, and the 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 short answer is yes with 20, no before 20 you cannot do that. The funny part is that I used to read C++ 17 related books that were published just before the standard was kind of polished and closed, the C++ 17 standard, and they actually used this syntax, and because it was almost getting into, so they thought that it's gonna make it to the standard. It didn't make it to the standard, but it made it to 20, which you can use if you have it today. The idea behind that is that this is very similar to having a template, but without, let's say you want to have a template function, but you don't really care about the type T. So sometimes you care about the type T because you want to do something with the type T. You can, from size of T to whatever, you want to do something with T. Sometimes you don't really care, right? You just want to take data and do something with data. You don't care about what is the actual T, what is the actual type. So this is a very good shorter version of the more verbose one, where you specify the type name T. So this is a function. We have a very kind of a beginner question from Reddit about templates that I'll show. But as it mentioned here, C++ 14 has something very similar for lambda, but not for related, so for simple functions. So C++ 20 allows this auto. This is a question. This is an answer for Amir Kirsch. So what Amir says is, okay, you can do it in C++ 20. There is even a more advanced way to use it with concept. So think about concept. Here's this sortable. By the way, if you're coming from Rust, it's very similar to what Rust has for generics. But anyway, sortable is a concept that you can slap with auto. So auto would be anything. It's a template, but it needs to be satisfying a specific concept that this type should be satisfy sortable concept. It doesn't explain what does it mean. When we had a session that is recorded and is on YouTube that Martin provided on concept. I highly recommend looking at it, like watching it. Don't do it. Don't do it now. Stay here. But after the session, you can take a look at that. Okay, so is there a way to pass auto as an argument? So as I mentioned, templates are the way to do it, but in C++ 14, you could already do that. So C++ 14, which is this syntax, and this syntax, if it's the first time you're seeing lambda, it has this syntax where you have a kind of a syntax where you capture something from the environment that would be used in the body of the lambda. So this would be just capturing, this would be the parameter of the lambda, and this would be the body. And you can think about lambda just kind of a syntactic sugar of a callable object where the body of the callable object is here. And these are the parameter that you can pass to the callable object. So this would be generic lambda, and we'll talk about generic lambda more in the next slides. So why it's useful in generic lambda? So here's hopefully it's visible. So here's a C++ 11 for each. So for each is something from algorithm. You can take a range. You can have a begin and end of some v. Let's say v it's a vector or whatever, some container, and then you have this lambda where you can run decal type to extract the type and have x as the parameter and then see out of x. So this code would just see out every single element in this container. There is a sort example where you take begin and end, and there is a shared pointer of a and b, which are parameters, and this is how the sort would look like. And here's another example of a lambda that takes this long unordered map as a parameter to return the size. So you can see that this is very verbose and very busy in terms of how the parameter type looks like. Like you have this decal type, you have this shared object, shared pointer, and this unordered map. There's a lot of things, and you can make it shorter. How? In C++ 14, there is this auto which was introduced. It's basically, you can think about it like a template. It is kind of a template under the hood, but it makes things shorter. And you can say, I don't really care about the type. Let the compiler figure it out. In compile time, there is no runtime here. It's all compile time. So in compile time, the compiler would deduce the type, but you don't need to specify it. So all this example would be very terse and much easier to grasp with this auto. I don't care about what is the parameter type. It just need to have that size. If it doesn't have that size, we'll get a compiler error. Okay? But this version, as it says here, it's not limited to just unordered map. Everything that has that size, it has a size function, would be uh, a good candidate to be passed as an argument to this parameter. But there's another thing that I would like to highlight. It's another Stack Overflow that I would like to highlight. It's actually, I find it even more appealing and more compelling using auto versus using the actual type in some cases. So here's a question. There's a person that tries to run a for each. There is a lambda here, some scrolling here, but there is a stoodmap. Stoodmap basically binary search tree from something to another something. So from string to some stood pair that has an integer and a vector. So this is how whoever made this question had this problem where he or she needed to have this for each, and this for each would be inserting that to a result. Okay, there is an error, and this was asked 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. So this error was here. It has a scroll, so I paste it here. In main, I have this callable object, and I cannot convert argument 1. So someone is passing an argument 1, which is a stood pair of const something something to a stood pair, a stood string of stood pair. So remember, this each element in the map is a map. It's a pair of std string and another pair that has an integer and a vector. So this std pair is each element of the map. Okay, so each element of the map has a key and a value. So the key, what the compiler says, look, I'm looking at I'm looking for a parameter. I have an argument and I'm looking for a parameter that I can bind to a std pair that takes a const of the key and the value, but you're giving me something which doesn't have a const. So std string it's not const when you pass. So take a look at where my pointer here. You can see that the std pair, which is the entire element, each node of the map is a std pair. And when we pass it as a this is the parameter that we have in the lambda parameter list. What this person had is a std pair of std string instead of const std string. And the compiler said, look, I have a different type. It's a std string, it's a std pair of const of a string, and you passing, so that's what you're passing, but the parameter says there is no const, and the compiler says I'm not compiling that. And the answer is you add this const to this std string. Now, how would Auto fix the whole thing? Auto would fix the whole thing by just adding, instead of having all this long type, std pair of const, we need to remember to write const of std string to the std pair, which is the value of the key value binary search tree. Instead of having this whole thing, just auto, that's it, and you're done. The compiler would deduce, because it's a template under the hood. The compiler is smart enough to deduce, oh, I need a std pair of const std string and std pair as a value. I'll instantiate the lambda that would fit into the requirements. So you say, okay, I don't need to have this long. And by the way, this whole thing would be shorter. It's just auto of the variable, the parameter name. That's it. Instead of having all this long type. So there's lots of usage that actually helps you to write even a better and more correct code while using Lambda. Any questions before we move to something else? Okay, I promised something very, very easy. I'm also looking at Reddit. There are a few Reddit subreddit that I'm looking at. One is CPP questions, and sometimes there are questions that worth just discussing. This is a very, very kind of a beginner. If you're new to C++ or you used to work with C++ and trying to get back, this is a good question. So this person says, I suppose I make a function that returns a matrix field with 0. So it looks very C-ish, but never mind. Let's assume this is also a C++ capable thing. Well, it compiles on C++ compiler, so it's fine. And how can I make that other than double? So you see, everything here is double. Okay, kind of a beginner questions, but worth mentioning. So what do you think would be? It's pretty obvious. What do you think would be the good approach? Templates. So when you have such, and again, if you're a beginner in C++, C++ has this notion of templates and generic data, which solve a lot of things. So using templates is basically the answer of how do I make it suitable for multiple types. Now, concept is about 20, again, referring to Martin's talk a few months ago, making it even much more verbose, but you can reach out for templates, even using the simplest approach and the simplest form of templates would greatly help you to make your code shorter, without repeats and capable of dealing with multiple data types. So I found a riddle in Incredible forum. So Incredible is a company from Israel that has a way, an infrastructure to compile faster your applications, kind of improving your build times. And I just happened to find that they have a forum that from time to time they have a uh, a question that they posting, and some of them are straightforward, some of them are kind of tricky. But I found this one something that I wasn't fully aware. It took me time to kind of think about it, but it's kind of initialization and bitwise bitfields at the same time. What do you think uh, this main function would print? And we can take a look at the struct. So we have a struct A with some member, and it has some bitfield with ternary operator. So forget about this whole bitfield for now. Let's talk about the ternary. So the ternary operator is pretty easy. It says if something is 1, we'll pick 3. Otherwise, we have 5 and initialization. Okay, good. We have these 2 instances. One is initialized. This is C++20 initialization style that used to be an extension. If you're coming from C, you already had it in C. But now we have I kind of blanking. What's the name of that? If someone remember it, it's kind of blanking the name of the style of initialization. But anyway, this is new in C++20. So we have this type of initialization where we initialized A, and then A2 has no initialization. We'll see what does it mean. And then there's a while loop, while A1, which is instance of A, and A2 are not the same. We're printing the member A, it's a public, so we can, and then we're shifting A to the left 1 bit, and the loop continues. Now, the reason we can actually have this uh, uh, operator where we can compare A1 and A2, the fact that we can do that comes from the fact that we have the C++20, and we had a talk about that a few months ago that I provided. We have this spaceship operator where you get with the default one would provide a default like kind of a straightforward comparison with the uint A that we have here, basically just a comparison of integers. So this is why we can actually compare A. We don't need this boilerplate code added. It's done automatically by having equal default. Okay, so if you thought about it, please let me know what you think. Okay, let's think about A1. Let's take a look at, you know what? Let's do A2. So A2, we don't initialize it with anything, right? So let's take a look at A. So A says if something is 1, have 3. Otherwise, I have 5, and then initialize it to nothing, to 0. So if A2 doesn't have 1, so it's gonna be a bit field of 5. So it's going to be 5. A1, on the other hand, has something initialized. So if it's 1, it's going to have 3 bits and initialize to 1. So what we ended up with is having A of A1 as 0, 0, 1. So A2 is 0 and A1 is 0, 0, 1. So when we shift A1A 1 bit every loop. So we have 0, 0, 1. So we print 1 because 0, 0, 1 is 1. Then we shifted 1, so we have 0, 1, 0, which is 2. Then we have the third iteration would be 1, 0, 0, which is 4. And then we shift it again. Now, since it's only 3 bits, it's going to be 0, 0, 0. And now it's equal to A2, and the while loop would end, which would be printing eventually 1, 2, and 4. The few interesting part to notice. First of all, kind of repeating this very, very, very useful simple. One of the things you can in every standard that is published, there are a few things that are super useful. The special operator is definitely useful. So it helps us in one line. We can just compare A1 and A2. It's very useful. The other part is we have this new way, and I don't know if someone already Googled for that. I just can't remember what's the name of this initialization.
Designated initializer.
Designated initializer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's what's his name? Bartek had an article on that like a few months ago.
Yeah. But I there's so many things I usually like but I sometimes I'm like, thank you so much. Designated initialization, that lots of people love it. I really like it. I tell you why I love it. I love it because it used to be an extension and people used it, and it used to work on some compilers. Some compilers needed all like it wasn't a standard, but people liked it, especially people coming from C. And I needed to deal with code which needed an extension from the compiler. Compiler was kind enough to allow it, but now it's funny standard. I really like writing code which is standard compliant versus all kind of extensions, GNU C++ or anything else. It's finally C++20. I think it's a good, nice extension, not extension, sorry, a nice feature that is added. So this is another element. And the last thing, so these two I pretty much knew. The only thing that I actually guessed while looking at this is that there is a ternary operator plus initialization happening. So I'm initializing at 1, and if it's 1, it's going to be this amount of bits versus this amount of bits if it's 0. So it's pretty niche, but if you just let you know that it is kind of possible. If you want to confuse or maybe impress your friends at work, you can use that. But don't be surprised. Yeah.
Is this C++20 or has this always been there?
Oh, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. Wait a sec. I
didn't know you could manipulate that.
I have a link.
Size.
Okay. Yeah, me too. I actually guessed. So, but let's do this. I have a C link. I have a compiler explorer link.
It's only C++20, I believe.
Okay. So it is 20. Let's do this. Let's just remove everything that is not 20. I'm just making it very if it's let's say 17. No, as you probably see, it's enabled only with 20. And it's a good question, Martin, because I wasn't even asking myself, is it 20 or before? So it looks like default memory engine for Bitfield only are available with. I think it's even, forget about the ternary. I think this one, would be only 20.
Does the ternary operator change the size of a bit field, or?
Yeah, it changed it changed the size. So default memory. So it's still compiled. It has a warning. So the trunk still take it because the code is there. So they're kind enough. But 20 would not produce any, unless you have W error. Of course, it's going to be an error. But 20 would not produce. So this initialization is but if I do, so this is 5. I just put 5, just an example. But this 17 would not work. Like it would work, because it's kind enough to print it as 5.5, but it says okay, it's not available pre-20. So good question, Martin. Thanks for bringing it up. Okay, let's go back. We almost done. I told you I need to cut it shorter today, so hopefully it's okay. I have like 3 slides. So let me reshare it. Okay, I'm flipping. Let me know if it's flipped. So you see the Wallet Fox one?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, put my pointer. Okay, 2 very nice Wallet Fox. Again, highly recommend go and check out his ranges. I actually used his ranges booklet this week, doing all kinds of ranges related stuff. Okay, so this is kind of more on the intermediate plus about dealing with lambdas that returns lambda. So the whole idea of functional, not the whole idea, but some of the functional programming idea is functions are first-class citizens, which means you can pass functions as an argument to parameters that accept functions. You can return functions from functions as a return value. There is a return type of this function. So they are first-class citizens, which is very convenient if you want us to do all kinds of nice tricks. So here's a very simple one. We have a lambda. So this is a lambda, and inside the body. By the way, Python has very similar stuff and other languages. It's not unique to C++. Obviously, I'm not talking even on pure functional programming. This is obviously there. So we have this lambda, which inside the body, we return something. We return a lambda. So it returns a lambda, and this lambda is capturing anything that we need inside this inner lambda. It would capture by value. And we're using auto. So this is a generic lambda. So since 14, we can do that. We use auto as we don't really care or know about the type of the parameter. But it says F because it stands for function. It's easier in this example, and X would be any value. And let's say we want to create a function named 3 that would take something and do it 3 times. Okay. So we create this function, this lambda, that returns another lambda. So eventually 3 would be a lambda that we can invoke. Okay. And the inner lambda that we're going to invoke, because we're returning this lambda, is having a single parameter that we're going to pass. So if you look at this example 3, it has 2 paren, right? And the first paren is a function. It's a lambda. The second paren is a parameter to pass. Okay, so let's start from the right. So the right one, so once we have this 3 function, we having this inner lambda, and it has 1 single parameter, and we're passing 0 to this parameter. So this 0 would be passed to this return statement. So that's one thing. The second thing is 3 is basically it's basically a lambda that has a return value of a lambda. So the first thing that we can do is we pass a function to this f. Okay, what happened is that once we activate this lambda, when we pass a function, we get another function in return. So this 3 paren some function and paren gives us another lambda, another function, and we pass this function 0. And what happens now? It's f of 0 of f of 0 of f of 0. It's kind of compounding, and the function is passed as by value to here, and it's captured. And now what we have is x being passed. So we have 1, 0 plus 1, and then plus another 1, plus another 1. So it outputs 3. This is why the number 3. there is something that calls identity. Identity means you have the same one, that this would be output 1. So 1 would output 1. There is a lot of very important usage in functional programming in using identity function. I'm not showing it here, but it's a very useful concept in functional programming. Okay, so this is one thing. This would be a bit more. The name is Curry, and I'm gonna fast forward to this book, Functional Programming by Ivan Kuchik, I think. I don't know if I pronounce his last name correctly, but an excellent book about functional programming in C++. It has ranges. I read it long time ago before I actually realized that ranges would be part of the book. I grabbed this book and I really enjoyed every single bit of this book. It starts simple, but gets very, very kind of more on the expert side, but still very, very readable. He's very good at explaining stuff. He has lots of, by the way, he's been a guest in lots of podcasts that I recommend listening to. But Curry basically is a I just copy paste from some website. F, A, B, and C becomes this sequence of G of A, you get an H, and then H of B, you get an I, and then I of C would be X, and this would be X. So let's take a look. Let's take one at a time. Increment. This is a simple lambda. There is nothing fancy. I have this increment would be a function. I can do increment of 7, and I'll get 8, right? Because 7 would be passed as a X. 7 plus 1 would be an integer. Returning 7 plus 1 would be 8. Let's take one level deeper. So it's very similar to what we had here. It's a function, it's a lambda that returns another lambda. So this lambda swap is a lambda that I can pass a function. This function would be captured and would be kept here. Once I take swap and pass something to swap, a function, this function, I can now pass X and Y, and it would swap X and Y. It would use Y as the first parameter and X would be the second parameter. So it would be like swap of a specific lambda that has 2 parameters, A and B, and we'll pass, let's say I pass 1 and 2, it's going to be passed as 2 and 1. So it's being swapped. So that's another way. And then this Curry thing, which I have here, it's basically same idea. We have a function that returns a function that does something. So I have Curry, I don't know how to pronounce it, which I pass a function. This function would be captured all the way to the end of, like, to the leaf. Now I have X and Y, so I can have a curry of a lambda that would have, I can pass 1 and then pass 2 as another paren, and it's going to be passed as 1 and 2 to the final lambda. So it's very, the idea behind it is like you can bind at different levels. You can bind values. Like in some level, you can bind X and then pass it on and on and on, and then bind a different value to Y. You don't need to bind X and Y at the same time. It's a very powerful concept that you can have the function. You don't know, but you have the function in your hand. You don't know yet how you're gonna pass the X and Y, but suddenly you know that you want to pass 7. You don't pass the second one, not now, but maybe later, and then you still have a function in your hand. Then you pass with another paren, you pass 8. Then eventually X and Y would be 7, 8, and the function would be invoked with 7, 8. It's kind of like think about it like kind of lazy evaluations. You slowly build the actual expression of the function as you go instead of having it up front. I have a function that takes 2 parameters. If I have the function in my hand, I need to pass these 2 parameters. But with currying, I can actually split it into multiple stages. It's a very, very powerful thing that is being used in the standard a lot. I bet the Rangers is doing it also. Okay, so we 6:12, which is about 12 minutes after what I wanted to have. Hopefully, it's okay with you if we stop here for today. Is there any question from anyone?
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Do you know, it was CPPCon, have you heard any news about whether they'll be doing virtual or what's going on with that?
I can't remember. I actually listened to John and Phil latest episode, and they did mention something, but there was something about CPPCon that John mentioned, and there is a drama right now in the community about CPPCon. I don't want to get into it. Maybe we can do it. We can talk about it offline. But there is some drama happening in CPPCon.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I just mentioned it because I know maybe a lot of others feel the same way. A lot of us want to kind of get out after 2 years of COVID.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, they always wait till the last minute to tell you what the rules are, whether you have to be vaccinated or not, whether there's, anyway. So I just
Yeah.
wondered if you heard any news. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll take a look at that because now I'm interested to know. Yeah, Arthur.
Yes, I noticed that this session is being recorded. Where can we look that up?
Yeah, if you go to YouTube, SD CPPMU, so San Diego C Meetup, so SD CPPMU, there's a channel, and I have some stuff to do this evening. This is why I'm actually need to drop off in a few minutes. But I'll get it done either tonight, hopefully tonight, or early tomorrow morning. So it would be on the channel soon.
I could also link to it on the.
Yeah,
blog.
thank you. Yeah, Martin
Whatever.
is also linking on his blog post. So yeah,
Second question, do you have a personal website?
personal website that I have? No, I do not.
Yes.
And again, I'm piggybacking on Martin's. He's generous enough to have a space for me. I do not have my own website. No.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Super
Thank
happy
you.
to have everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned new stuff. And see you next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kobe.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Kobe.